I have Ricky this week. So I made a PowerPoint slide. I tried to do a vlog. Oh no. Well, they're like videos in each one. I don't know how to. Yeah.
I think that's why it's taking so long to download, because I made like some narration in between. I'm not sly enough to like make a vlog yet, so this is I'm really trying to get into vlogging.
You ready to pick up all the donuts and
Your voice is very
The color wheel is turning around, so we're just waiting. Oh no.
Sorry for the difficulties, everyone. All right, we're going to play that at the end when we have time because Jenna's video we're getting that worked out. So we'll hold off on that. So with that being said, we are now going to move. We'll explain that when Jenna does that for the new rookies here. So with that being said, we're going to move right into new business for SSB 35 on-campus garden project. Is there an author present?
everyone. You may know me as Speaker Pro Tem Board Jacob Hyde, using he/him pronouns. But now I am also that, but also Senator presenting legislation. Isn't that so fun?
Samir Ansari, he, him, his.
Sarah Boltzmann, she, her, hers.
So you might have been like, whoa, we're asking for a lot of money for one single thing, and that's correct. So this is a piece of legislation to help fund the UI gardeners. A lot of details were put in this legislation. It's pretty extensively covered, but just kind of like an overview of everything. So like there was a garden project that kind of like was established a few years ago, last year, at some point in time. It's in the legislation. And that project ended up falling through a little bit just because of budget cuts and some reallocation of funds and priorities. So the purpose of this legislation is not to like fund the entire garden. It's just to cover labor costs for the garden so that when people in UI gardeners and other stakeholders for the garden project go and approach local businesses and ask for any kind of donations, they do have a little bit of leverage being like, look, we already have our labor costs covered for, so thank you for asking that question. And so, so a lot of the history in this project is in the legislation. The budget's right here, and we're allocating $38,374. Sweet.
Are there any questions for the authors?
This will choose better.
Is this aligned with our, am I speaking loud enough?
Can you use the mic too?
No, I'll use mine.
Does this align with our strategic budget that we've referenced so much in the last couple of weeks?
It wasn't allocated the first round, the one that Noel hosted 300 office hours for, but it's been added since then and adjusted accordingly. As of I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago.
Any other questions for the authors? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to be moving into a period of discussion over SSB 35. Senator Kettner.
Hello, I would just like to propose a friendly amendment.
Sure. Where?
Okay, so under Appendix B, under the furniture.
Go all the way down here?
Yeah. Under furniture, benches is spelled wrong.
Do the authors accept?
Yeah.
All right. Senator Percorning.
Yeah, so I will be in favor of this. I had a couple concerns at first, so I emailed Sarah and Noel, and they both gave me very detailed answers. I was kind of concerned that this is a lot of money, but they used to be, when CFOs existed, they were CFO. They're a very reputable organization that has worked closely with us in the past, so I feel like if we give them this money, they'll use it accordingly and in the best ways possible. So they really calmed some of my fears about this, so I will be voting in favor.
Senator Weber.
Will one of the authors yield to a question? Jacob Hyde. Okay, thanks, Jacob.
Okay.
Do you have, and maybe I didn't read it carefully enough, but do you have an estimate of how many students this will impact?
Well, I mean, theoretically, it can impact all students on campus just because it will be an open garden, and anyone pretty much can go there and enjoy it. There wasn't really ever a specific number. Yeah, pretty much all students, community members too. It's gonna be just an open garden.
So it will be a garden for students to go just take food, but also for the IMU and for the food pantry in the community.
Yeah, so as of right now, UI Gardeners is a great organization that I will probably end up yielding the floor to like UI gardeners because I don't want to like speak on everything, but like I know that a lot of the garden stuff we can grow is like specifically for like the food pantry and also the IMU. So like yes, students primarily would benefit from that, but also just like the design of this garden is more of like there's like it's not like a classroom in the sense that like actual classes will be taught there to my knowledge, but it's very much like a place where people can just also go and spend time and enjoy like kind of this natural beauty of the garden. I'll yield the floor to Julia. She would like to.
Hi, my name is Julia Pasca, she, her, hers. I'm one of the co-presidents of the student garden. This is Derek Tate, he's my co-president. This is Hunter Stazak.
He's our treasurer, Julia, Derek, Hunter, got it. Yeah, so our current garden, which you guys may or may not know where it is, it's several miles kind of out on the outskirts of campus. As of right now, it's open to everyone at all times, right? So even though there's probably 30 of us who are very involved with the garden, maintaining it, and another at least 30 every season who float in and out, and take what they want when they're there, and then obviously we donate the rest of what isn't claimed by people out at the physical garden to the IMU Food Pantry and the Johnson County Crisis Center. It's open at all times. In theory, anyone at the university, anyone in the community could be going there and taking as much produce as they want throughout the growing season. However, as of right now, it's so very inaccessible to people. If you don't have a car, you're riding out on a half-an-hour bus ride. The bus isn't gonna come and pick you up again for at least an hour, and then you have a half-an-hour bus ride home. It would probably feel really weird to people to go all the way out there and then there's no one there, and while it is unlocked, I think you would feel like you were intruding a little bit, right? If there's no one there welcoming you in and telling you, please take all of this, it's for you for free. So the new garden would resolve the accessibility problem. It would make this space just friendlier and more accessible to everybody. It would probably end up boosting our harvest, which is already close to 800 pounds most years, because we'd be able to get out there easily and more regularly. It actually would have an outdoor classroom space, so the design is really intricate and beautiful, and very expensive, which was not our call on that. But yeah, it'll have like benches and kind of like a pergola. And right now there is a class taught at the university through Lifetime Leisure Skills twice a year that does things at our garden. So that would be more accessible. And we're also anticipating that environmental science, public health, even like UI Reach, because it will be ADA compliant, might use the space. So we're hoping that it will bring educational opportunities to campus as well. I think that answers the question you had and more. If anyone has any other questions, we're super happy to answer them.
Senator Rodriguez.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to section 2, line item number 2, where it starts with grow. I'd like it to say grow sustainable produce for the Iowa Memorial Union Food Pantry and West Side Food Pantry as well.
So grow sustainable produce for the Iowa Memorial Union Food Pantry.
And the West Side Food Pantry.
Yeah.
I think that's from our mission statement, which needs to be updated now that there is a West Side Food Pantry. So I don't think we mind if you guys change it, but as Noelle pointed out, it's a cited source, so that might affect it.
Do the authors accept that amendment?
No.
You don't accept that amendment?
Not that it's cited, no.
Okay. So you could re-propose that as an unfriendly amendment if you choose, but as of now, Senator Berry.
Julia, would you be open to another line of questioning?
Yes.
Okay, so first perspective, I went to IRC West High School, so I went to school very close to where the current garden is, and I know the students that go to West High, and I was just curious about whether or not you guys had any issues with vandalism or with like theft out at that current garden. Just because I know since this would be out closer to downtown, and I know what the area is currently being used for by where the garden is being proposed, whether or not there are any current concerns about vandalism or theft or destruction of property, and what have been conversations about that so far?
Yeah, we've never had vandalism or anything damaged in our garden except for by like deer and bunnies. Our lawnmower did go missing one time, and we got a lock on our shed after that, and it was resolved. And the new design would have an actual brick shed that would not be a piece of plastic over a hoop. So everything of value would be locked up. I also know what that area is used for. We would not hope to contribute to that in any way with anything we grew. But yeah, I don't foresee that being an issue if the high schoolers haven't gotten to it yet. I think it'll coexist.
Senator Smith.
So I'd like to express my support for this legislation. I volunteered at the food pantry and I've seen people excited like firsthand when they say that there is fresh produce. I know that it is a good healthy. This legislation would provide good healthy food options for the Iowa food pantry. And they're already a great partner that gives us sustainable produce. So I just express my support for this legislation.
Jacob, would you yield a couple of questions, please? So I definitely looked at this legislation, and then I think I missed something. Where's the new garden going?
So it's like, so next time there's that weird building that doesn't do anything right. It's called the house or whatever. It's like, and there's a parking lot next to that on the other side, and it's next to that.
Okay, and my second question is what's happening to the space currently used as
yeah, it's just open, kind of there's not anything.
Senator Smith. The previous question has been called. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Weber. All those in favor of ending the discussion over SSB 35, please signify your vote by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And the link is now open. You'll have 2 minutes to submit your vote. question. To play a video with sound, I should have need one. Have all voted who wish, have all voted who wish, have all voted who wish. And the legislation passes. All right, so now we're going to be moving to SSB 36. Is there an author present?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've been in UISG for 4 years and there's never been a constitutional amendment, so this is kind of fun. This is just removing the Joint Finance Committee from our Constitution because it doesn't exist. Any questions? It is also aligned with the bylaw changes that you see coming up. So we have a question, I saw your hand. Sure. The Joint Finance Committee used to be filled with some SABOC representatives and some graduate professional student government members who also work with their finances to allocate money to our collaboratively funded organizations, groups like CARE UI, Bijou, Scope, etc. We are completely changing how those organizations receive funding. So now they're predominantly going to get funding from UISG, and that makes this Joint Finance Committee obsolete now. Also, we haven't met all year, so it's like it hasn't existed for a year. So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks.
And just to provide clarification, with the rest of the bills tonight, we will not be voting on anything. These are just readings of the Constitution and bylaws for the changes that will be voted on next week. So just a clarification on that. So next we will have SSB 37. There's an author present.
Okay, hi everyone, it's Alexi Sanchez.
Hi, I'm Lily Burns, she, her, hers.
And like I mentioned before, Lily Burns and I worked on this piece of legislation with the awesome Ben Collins in the back regarding the student athlete position liaison. So hopefully you got a chance to read about it, a lot of good content in there, and we're hoping that people are excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I am currently a sport and recreation management major, so I've had the amazing opportunity to work with the tennis student athletes and learn a lot about their scheduling. I think this is such a unique opportunity that UISG has to bring in this new voice, so I would really encourage everyone, please ask questions, but definitely ask Ben everything you want to know before next week, because he's been such an amazing resource, and I can't wait to get just as many amazing student athletes in UISG.
And then lastly, we hope that the foundation that we create with this can potentially serve for other positions in the future that may be lacking the representation within the organization.
Are there any questions?
Yes, Amber?
Hi, okay, so I know the answer to this question because I talked to Ben, but I'm not sure all of Senate knows, so I'm kind of asking just for like a broad explanation. But could you guys explain why you decided to not give this position like voting rights?
Yep, we will go ahead and have Ben answer that question for you. Can someone give him the mic, please?
Yeah, so the reason that we decided to go with no voting rights for this position, and All of these questions that a lot of you have will be explained in a memo that I'm going to send out to everybody tonight. So it'll give it a little more detail because I know there's probably a lot of questions. The reason we went with no voting rights is mainly because student athletes have an additional level of administration above them. And our staff members are very ingrained in the Iowa Student Athlete Advisory Committee. So we don't have full autonomy to make decisions on our own. And in order to preserve the integrity of UISG, we wanted to make sure to keep the staff truly separate. That's one thing that we think is awesome about UISG is that it truly is a student organization where the students are making all the decisions. So we wanted to make sure to preserve that and have it as a non-voting position where it's more feedback and ideas and bringing a voice to the table and not necessarily having that vote compromised potentially by staff being involved. For us, having our staff involved isn't a bad thing. We love that our staff is involved because it helps us make good decisions and do smart things and learn a lot about what they do. But we want to make sure that those two things are separate since UISG is specifically for students.
Awesome. Anything else?
Thank you. All right, so now we'll be moving into SSB 38. Yeah. So the next authors are going to be presenting SSB 38 through 43. And Joseph just sent you all an email with the changes reflected in the bylaws as they are based on the color codes. So feel free to pull that up on your own screens as well.
Yes, to specifically answer why we did it that way, so like, instead of having it on the legislation so you'd be confused where it's being added, we just add it straight in the bylaws so you know exactly where it's being included to reduce confusion. So just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, hi, I'm Joseph, he, him, his.
So I'm Jenna, I sit on internal, she, her, hers.
And I'm Kevin, doing this.
If I'm remembering right, I believe on the agenda the first one is the general bylaw update. If you look at the bylaw update document that I sent out to you in your Outlook, those are all the edits made in yellow. So most of these consist of either changes that like an entire sentence has been deleted from the bylaws, so we re-included it so that like the actual bylaw makes sense, or I guess it's director of communications. Sorry, I'll transition to this one. Sorry, director of communications. So Kristen. Is she back there? Oh, okay. She reached out to me and was like, hey, I have some ideas about my bylaws. And so she wanted to change it so that it more accurately represented the flow of directive communications and also address some issues that she had been having this last year. Specifically, I want to note in this line in section 5, it says, in addition to having the former communications director present, the new communications director will also sit on as an ex officio non-voting member of the committee being the Office Administration Committee. I know that Kristen thought it would be very important that not only the previous director of communications, but also the currently appointed director of communications would be present when choosing the communications team that new director of communications will be in charge of, so that it can help the relations inside that communications committee or communications group, so that they can be as productive as possible and be as efficient when completing initiatives for executives and senators. Another point that I would like to point out, another section I'd like to point out is here in this Director of Communications section 6. It says that the Director of Communications holds the right to decline or suggest modifications to any UISG communications team request. So Kristen wanted to institutionalize the comms request form, and so we kind of did that through this clause. And this also specifies that if the Director of Communications, when consulting with their comms team, if they decide that they, at the end of the day, can't meet the expectations of the senator or the executive and what they want with their media that they want to put out into the world so that they know about their initiatives, that they do have the right then to work with the president of the student government to draft a contract with an external source for communications materials, just so that it gives more directions to senators and executives that they do have the ability to make external contracts with other groups. But it should be a priority to go to the director of communications first and consult with them and make sure that they don't already have the capabilities to do those changes. I think I got all of those up there, all those bullet points. Yeah, I think we should do ask if anyone has questions right now over this section specifically. Anna?
By what vote does an outside party thing need to be approved by the Senate in that last section 6?
What do you mean? The external contract?
Yes.
So actually currently, so the president drafts contracts, and then those contracts, as long as they're within the budget of what a normal budgetary limits of the president and their team, it wouldn't have to be approved by the Senate then. But if specifically the Senate did not like that contract that was made, they do have the ability to, at least in my understandings of the bylaws and the Constitution, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they can make legislation to change that contract. But I believe, for the most part, if the president approves of the contract and signs off on it, and it's below the budgetary limit of the president, then it does not need to be approved. But so am I wrong? Okay.
Yeah, so just from my knowledge, like I might be like maybe saying this in a different way than what Joseph said, but to my understanding, the Senate can ratify a contract. I believe that's the word that's used. So we can approve any contract that the president were to sign, but I don't believe that we can say no to a contract. We can simply agree and express our support to it. So, but we can also double check on that.
So that main section there was just supposed to outline that senators and executives should first go to the comms team to see if they have the capabilities to fulfill the request that they want. And then they can work with the president afterwards if the director of the communications team can't meet the requests. It also says in there that there's the ability to make, the director of communications can suggest changes to reduce the time needed to do that to create the material. So like if someone requests a video and the director of communications suggests that they make a photo campaign instead, that would take a lot less time. That's something that the director of communications can have. We just want them to make sure that we are trying to increase the conversations between senators and executives with the director of communications and their comms team, so that the conversations can be had about how we can be more transparent with our initiatives and make sure that we're getting as much participation by the student body and community members in our events that we are holding on campus. Yes, Sarah.
Do you think that this sets a precedent to allow previous executive positions to define or decide who will be in their upcoming position?
So I believe currently previous executives, at least in how the bylaws are set up now, which is how I'm basing a lot of this off of, previous executives do sit in as ex officio members of the OAC during interviews of new members for that position. It's what's defined in the bylaws, and Christian wanted to make sure that it was specified that not, because the director of communications should have been approved before they start filling the comms team, that it's not only the previous communications director, but also the one that had been approved, so that they have more say in what their comms team will be. If I'm wrong, again, someone fix what I'm saying.
So last year, for example, Logan was the director of communications last year, and he sat in on this year's comms team member, like their interviews, but Kristen did not. So she would want it that both Logan and Kristen would sit in on the interviews for their team members. Does that make sense?
Can I ask another question? Sure. Does this mean that the positions will be appointed after executives instead of the current system that we use? Because most of these, they might have been replaced at this point, but what? really slandered me. But anyways, because the positions were filled along with executive applications, weren't they?
From my understanding, there is no defined process, like and anywhere in our bylaws, there's no defined process for how the OAC fills positions. So this would maybe nudge the OAC to say, hey, maybe fill all the director positions first and then team members.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Yeah.
You might have said this and I just missed it. So is the communication request form going to be transitioned to the SharePoint thing that Hal was on or no?
So when we were making, this is a general answer that should answer your question that is very specific. When making our bylaw changes, we wanted the bylaw changes to change things how we're currently doing them and not necessarily like expect changes to be made, because we didn't want to make that expectation on Senate to make changes and like make them add more pressure to Senate to make them feel like they needed to make changes because of changes that we're trying to make now. So like if the SharePoint is institutionalized in the bylaws, or when it is incorporated, if it is incorporated, like that will then be on the people incorporating it to make those changes to reflect it here in the bylaws. But we didn't want to add any extra pressure on Senate and make them enforce their hand and make them feel like they had to make changes when we just wanted to change the current situation. So at some point, yes, but right now, no. Yes,
So is there anything explicitly in like this description that says that senators or executives have to go through the director of communications first before like moving on to other like outside parties?
Right now, it's not directly stated that you have to, but I think it's a general expectation that it should be considered when making initiatives, because that's what they're there for. They're there to support senators and executives both in their initiatives, because they are the communications team for UISG, and they should be the easiest for them to communicate with. And so we hope that this procedure that we put out here helps with that. But no, it does not say that it's a definitive, you have to go through this way, but like, it's almost as an expectation, yes.
To add on to that, the first line of 6.1 there is, if UISG communications team request is denied, the request can be filled by an outside party. And so that kind of sets the expectation that you would first have to file a comms team request to do anything else.
Is there any way we could make this expectation like part of this change?
So that's a great question. Next week, when this legislation is proposed and we have a debate, by all means make an unfriendly amendment at that point, and we can debate it as an entire group. I mean, I would say that it could be a friendly amendment, but at the end of the day, I think that change is a little more than what a friendly amendment should be. So I think the best route is to make it unfriendly so that the rest of Senate can have a say into that kind of decision.
Yeah, and just with all of our legislation tonight, this is just our proposal for what we are going to have to discuss. The language should be perfect, and so a lot of the amendments are expected, and so that's why we have this offering.
Any more questions on this one? Okay, it's the next one. So, operations. If you haven't already heard of this, that's something that I've been talking about a lot, and at least some of you have reached out and asked about your opinion on this. I'm very close with Kyle on this. I, as a first year leader, I've had the honor of being a part of a lot of higher up leadership meetings. So I really like to be part of those, to be part of this change. But currently, the executive assistant, who is I at least noticed, a lot of people noticed that like it's kind of vague, the description of the executive assistant position. Lauren does a lot of things, but I don't think those are recognized within the boss. So this position not only keeps the two of the main points of the executive assistant, but also several administrations. It's important for those things to be continued. And you can only put some in tracking transition notes. Sometimes you can be lost over. And so making sure there's a position there that is making sure that leading those changes to other individuals. I'm trying to find these multi-administration initiatives. Yes, so basically what I said, with the transition between administrations as well, I'd like to know that I have this bold underlined and in full caps. In this last section 10, this is where there's no precedent for this. This is very new, making this position last a lot longer than most executives, so that they do sit in their position throughout the transition between administrations. So at one point, there will be two director operations functioning at the same time. In our conversations, there a lot of concern was raised about having a director of operations that was appointed by a previous president or accepted by a previous administration, and then having that sort of director administration, causing a lot of people to butt heads, and it could really reduce the efficiency of student sec and UISG as a whole. So we created the idea that that person would only serve 1 month into the next administration, and then a new person would be taking charge of that position. And I basically give them the entire summer to learn about the position and make sure they're an expert on SharePoint and or whatever website they use. Sorry, that's an expectation or that's a change that I would like to see an expectation on the Senate. But another thing I didn't put in here is there are a lot of roles in here, but there's a lot more that I wanted this person to do, but we didn't want to necessarily overlook them. So when we advertise this position to students on campus, we wanted to make certain positions to do a lot more to show that they have a lot more variability in the position. And I think we didn't want that to be in the bylaws. We want that these are the most important positions in the world that we want to have in the university. But they hold a lot more role when it comes to making sure positions are fair and thorough, and making sure that all of our internal workings, when it comes to starting documents for transition between administrations or initiatives that last more than one single administration, that they're done correctly and that they are continued. Because as a student organization that has such an internal rate, yet we do work on things that are very important on our campus, it's really important to make sure that we keep doing the same things at least, and then do more. So if we can make sure that we're at least far every year,
Okay, so this person that's observing the phone call and the mom, but they also want to see if
I can't put a specific person not to let me know they've talked to Dr. Johnson about this. So this wouldn't necessarily affect the system they're using now to compensate people. Currently, since the salary of individuals not included, that was not changed. But if that doesn't need to consider whether or not they have the same salary, just over 13 months, a new salary, what they are really getting a month, and just add that on to it. That's a conversation with someone else. The roles and duties of this individual, and not necessarily the salary of that person. You understand the concern, something that if this is implemented, it's just a decision I think depends on how we do it. So, trying to figure it out, because that is a lot to worry about until we actually have it instituted. But the capability is there. Sorry, this is a really long answer.
Assuming this passes next week, what position
additional things for the rest of the term. Because that's what we applied for. Yes, Colin.
With the current director of operations, like whoever it is, like next year, would they be able to reapply and do that again for another year?
I don't see why not. If they do a great job and everyone wants them to be there, by all means, if the OAC and the president and vice president really appreciate what they do and they choose to have them there, I don't see why not. They can continue doing that. But at the end of the day, it's up to the OAC. They are the ones that make that decision. And if they do or don't want that person to return, that is up to them. Again, to reiterate, the old director of operations will only be functioning for a month into the new administration, so that should as we try to reduce the amount of conflict between a new administration and an individual that was of the old administration. So they do have the capability to keep them, but they don't have to. Any more questions? Okay, you can move on. Again, sorry. So general bylaw updates. I was talking about this at the beginning before I was told it was the director of communications. All of these changes are in yellow in the bylaw update document that you all received. They are a lot of grammatical fixes, adding words in to make sure that the interpretation follows what UISG is saying. This specific one at the beginning just includes the new definitions and acronyms of UISG. It takes out finance definitions and acronyms and includes things like the OAC, and also defining what instant runoff voting is, because we use that to vote for the speaker and the speaker pro tem and committee chairs. Yeah. But it wasn't defined in the bylaws. So it's nice now that we have that defined, so people don't question how that functions. And if you have a question about it, it's literally copy and pasted from the elections code. So like, you all should have approved it at the beginning of this administration, or at least the ones that have been here since the beginning of the administration. So yeah.
Another change.
Oh, and another change specifically, this is really important actually. Seated senators definition was changed to be the current people sitting here in this room when voting. So when you vote, it is determined by the people currently present. And so then quorum then had to be changed because quorum was, you used the definition of seated senators. And so quorum now is set at 26 senators. So that is 25% or 50% plus 1, so 25 plus 1 is 26. So like that would make it so the current senators sitting in this room are the ones, if there is a majority / 2/3 majority, it's based off of the current ones sitting in this room, and not, and it's not like if someone isn't able to make it because they have an exam or they have another conflict, that their vote is being counted as a no towards legislation. So their number is not being counted against individuals that do vote aye, I guess, to say instead of no, nay, aye. On a piece of legislation, so that it should help incentivize people to come when they can, but also to not penalize individuals that can't make it for academic or other reasons. I can open up to questions now. On this specific section, this is all part of a bigger piece of legislation, but yes, Ziheng, I saw your hand up first.
I'm just curious about, did you write on the bylaws about what's the responsibility that the old person who was on the position, that he should try to help the new person, like how to help them? Did you write it on the bylaws?
Is this in response to the director of operations?
Responsibilities of helping and guiding those new persons.
Amber, is this, do you know, what position are you talking about? Is this on general executive positions or the director of operations?
The director of operations.
Okay, so to go back, it's a kind of an expectation between transitions. There's the transition section of the bylaws that just basically states that the transition period is about a time where each executive is required to meet at least once with the previous executive, and that they should share any notes and any things that they need to know going into their position. A time of sharing and collaborating and making the individual individual is setting up the new individual to be as successful as possible. Because I think it's the hope of everyone. We didn't think that would be specific because that is an expectation for all executives and anyone to have that peaceful transition. Very collaborative.
Sims?
Yeah, thank you. Is Jacob assisting this one?
Yeah. So just because I know we've had some issues with this in the past, so that current definition of excellence, so like there were 50 senators, right, and then like 13, a majority that was 49 votes on extension.
Yes. So this is drawing, I believe, Jenna can talk, but it's drawing from.
Copy and pasted from Concord schools. So it's just a clarification of what we should have been using in the past.
Most of these things are supposed to help clarify for people if they ever have questions about some terminology laws. So it's not supposed to really like change how we function. Yes, these do changes how we do function. But it's the process. You have a question in this section? Okay, yeah.
So just a scenario, you have like these senators and someone abstaining. What happens? Does like the vote still happen, or like with that new?
So it isn't necessary. So I would think that it would still work because they're still a seated senator. They're just removing themselves from the vote. So you just so people to be in the room and vote. So still in the room from that particular vote.
And let's follow up.
Also, what was like the rationale for changing the definition of seated?
So the current process is that 50 of us are voting one. So if I had to miss like 4, my vote would be an automatic no because I'm not here voting yes. So we wanted to change it so that it would be the people in this room who are making the decision instead of like making people force a vote even though they couldn't be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? We'll move on to the next section. So this is specifying how the process of removal of Senate would include. It is just supposed to help mirror what the actual process is and specify in the bylaws. Currently, the bylaws don't specify who makes the decision about removal, and it also doesn't specify necessarily the process for appealing removal. I'd also like to specifically point out that we changed the number of missed office hour weeks from 5 to 4. The rationale behind that was if you missed 2 unexcused absence would then equal 8 weeks of absence, which would mean you would be missing half of a semester of office hours. So we believe that if you're missed more than half of a semester's worth of office hours, that it would be of leadership in Senate to look at making sure that individual is either held accountable from that point or then removing them so that someone else who can keep up with their office hours is included in the Senate then. To go back to removal, the appeals process wasn't defined. It actually allowed an individual to, it was so vague that an individual could try and appeal their removal from the Student Senate at any point within the Student Senate session. So if they had been removed in the fall, the bylaws would have allowed you to go in during the spring and appeal your removal from Senate. And so we did not necessarily, it's not that we didn't want that ability to be there, but like we wanted to specify that there was a week's time from the notice that you get from being removed from Senate to contact the Internal Affairs Committee for them to have a meeting to determine whether or not you should overrule that removal. But we then also made it so that it's more than just a majority, that it's ratified because that person is going to be removed by the Speaker of the Senate, Internal Affairs Chair, and the UISG advisor. So I would hope that the Speaker, the Internal Affairs Chair, and the UISG advisor would have a very good reason for removing someone. And to go against that, I think would mean more than just a simple majority of Internal Affairs. I think it would require at least 4 out of 5 of the Internal Affairs Committee to make that decision. Yeah. Yes, Amber, question from now. Yeah.
Were you ready for questions?
Yeah, this section's really short.
Okay, so I'm a committee chair and I'm expected to do 5 office hours every single week, which is fine, but I know like one time I only did 4 hours and 30 minutes, which I still did 4 hours and 30 minutes, but it went down in the books as like 0, so like an unexcused absence, I think. So I was just curious, did you guys kind of talk about like if there's any differences between committee chairs and just like a normal senator who only has to do 1 office hour, and if there's any like leniency with that or not?
Well, missing 1 week would just mean 1 towards the 4. That would account for an unexcused absence, correct? So you would still have up to, if you really wanted to, you'd still have up to 7 weeks of not meeting your office hour requirements to then still remain in Senate, because it's 4 weeks of no office hours to get 1 unexcused absence, and it's 2 unexcused absences to warrant removal from the Senate. So that means 8 weeks of no office hours would warrant removal from the Student Senate. And this, again, I guess would make it more specific that if you are a person running for a committee chair position or for any executive position or the speaker pro tem, that it comes with the understanding that you would put forth that time for office hours to help with the inner functionings of UISG. And not to say that you all now aren't. It's just we wanted there to be, we thought 5 is such an abstract number, and making 8, so that would mean 10, which is a majority of a semester. We didn't think that was necessarily, we didn't understand why. So we tried to make that change more understandable so that it was half of a semester. Yeah, Zoe? I believe it is during an entire term. So it does count for, between fall and spring. So then it is during the semester, sorry, I'm wrong. So you get 2 unexcused absences per semester. So like, let's say this spring semester, you missed 7 weeks of office hours. With this definition, you would still be fine. Someone would contact you at that point, I would hope, and say, hey, let's get these office hours going. But by all means, you are still in compliance with the bylaws. IDW?
We start Senate during the spring semester, then it's the fall into the spring. So does that mean that you get 2 unexcused for like the first spring?
Well, we only have 2 meetings during the spring, so I would just say they just wouldn't count, because it also is a new idea, because some people have obligations the first Tuesdays of the semester, so we typically just don't count the first spring semester.
Yeah.
Are there similar changes on the executive side of the bylaws as well?
So for each executive in their own executive descriptions are, actually I don't know what the requirements are for how many, but how many office hours have they missed it. I believe it's up to the cabinet director and the president and the vice president to determine whether or not an executive is still eligible to be in their position, and it is then at the end of the day the president's choice whether or not they want to keep that person in the cabinet. So it is a responsibility within the president and vice president, but as a Senate, as senators ourselves, we believe that that's the definition we wanted to have for Senate. Any more questions on this section specifically? Sorry. Okay, let's move forward. Shout out to first year senators. There's more than 5 of us this year. So I wanted to make it so that the bylaws included that. So at the moment, it kind of made it seem that like only 5 first year senators could be appointed to the nominations process. And I kind of wanted to like change the language a little bit so that it could incorporate more than 5, which is what happened this year. So it wasn't that I was necessarily trying to make a change to have more, it's that I wanted the bylaws to follow what we have been doing here in UISG. And then next, this nominations process. This changed the definition before of how nominations happened. In this section before, it specifically said that there was a fall nominations process, and then after that, vacant seats were filled after 2 weeks of vacancy. This institutionalizes not only the fall nominations process was already institutionalized. This institutionalizes the spring nominations process. And it also specifies kind of a little bit how it's run. So it's saying that after the fall nominations process, there's a 1 month gap in which any openings in Senate seats are filled by the ranking system that is created by Internal Affairs. After that point, any vacant seats are saved for the spring nominations process. Then the spring nominations process will fill any vacant seats from that point on, and then the ranking system will be used for the rest of that semester. So this kind of encompass that. And if you have a question about this, any other clause before university committees, it kind of just we wanted to make it more vague, just because the where committees are, the committees are made in any department, any organization on campus, and that if we do have a UISG advisor there or a UISG liaison, we wanted it to be, we wanted them to be included in the UISG bylaws. So we made it a little more vague and encompassing, so that any new committee that is created on campus, and if there is UISG representation, that person is included in there, that they can be contacted by Internal Affairs about what they are what they are advocating for and what they're talking about, so that they can keep us in the loop here as a student government. Any questions on this section specifically? Yes, Colin?
So with the change to institutionalize the spring nominations process, so say in the fall semester, we have 25 senators drop, and we can't meet quorum. Is there any type of, it's worst case scenario, but it's bylaws, so I feel like we should have some kind of system for if that happens. So is there any changes that directly address that, or are we just?
I think that's so unprecedented that we would just have to wing it. I don't want to, our bylaws are already growing, and I feel like that's such a unique situation that it would just be up to the discretion of the leaders of that student government.
And I would also like to add a point there that if 25 senators drop from student government, quorum I think is the least of their worries. That is an institutional crisis at that point. I think that there should be larger conversations than quorum being discussed about the climate of UISG or the ability of people to participate within their organization. So yes, I agree that concern actually did come up, but we did say that is a very rare moment. Jacob?
I don't know if this is clarified, that's not else in the bylaws, because I'm probably not familiar with them, which would be, but so it just says nominations shall nominate individuals, and I know you're talking about a ranking system, and I know that exists, but it doesn't specify in the bylaws that you have to nominate individuals from that ranking system.
It does in the next section that we'll look at.
Cool.
Yep. It'll be the first section, I believe, on the next slide that we'll be looking at. So, alternate nominees. Nominations shall create a ranked list of alternate nominees that may take the place of individuals who decline their nomination or who are unable to complete their terms. So this is following what Internal Affairs has always traditionally done, making a ranking system, but it also specifies when it's going to be used. So it will be used a month following the fall nominations process, so that that ranked system is actually used for a month. But after that, any seats that are open won't be filled with the ranked system. It will be filled with the spring nominations process. Again, if it does happen to have an institutional crisis where we lose a lot of senators and we need that in order to have quorum, I think the ranked list would be a great place for us to go first to fix that situation. But then after that, it says that after the spring nominations process, if there are any vacancies, it should be filled with that ranked list of senators. So it specifies more the purpose of that ranked list when it comes to nominating people to the student senate. Second, conflict of interest. So I know this is something that is very scary to some people when referencing an exception to an election code, another government document that we all voted on and passed this last fall, passed changes to it. I would like to say, informally, I talked with Sydney and Cameron, the SEC, that the statement of conflict of interest breached the integrity of the elections code. They do believe that this is in the best interest of UISG as an organization in regards to its transparency with its internal functionings. and that we try to support any individual in UISG so that they feel like they can be as honest as possible, especially in a process where we are adding new members, so that there any conflict of interest or any reasons for an influence that is unknown to internal affairs, that it should be voiced. And along with that, we did include a confidentiality statement because currently it only keeps the confidentiality of members or individuals that are interviewed for UISG. We wanted to also include the confidentiality of senators sitting on internal affairs, so that if someone in internal affairs does come out and spread information about individuals that were interviewed or senators in internal affairs, that it can be seen as an act that can impeach you. I know the word impeach is a very strong word, but when we are talking about people's identities and information that they are confiding in other individuals, I think it's very important that we take a strong stance to make sure that people's personal identities are being protected within the nominations process. And it's something that we think is should be instituted so that the nominations process is as fair and as transparent as possible. Yes, Nancy.
Why did you have it only that temporary list to be used for internal purposes only a month after the fall nominations process?
So this is definitely something that people can make amendments to when it goes on the floor. How long? We made the decision for it to be a month. I believe it was mainly my decision to make it for a month, but again, it can change. So that it gave a timeline as to what constitutes as a seat that should go to the spring nominations process and what should be a seat that should be filled by the range system. It really is just an arbitrary time.
We also could like to send them an email and we're like, hey, you're an alternate. We don't want to keep them hanging for like 2 months and then say, oh, now you're in. So it also gives a defined time to hear from us in a month. Like 5 years or something. So like everyone just gives more credit to everyone.
And to go off of that, sorry. If a person does apply to be UISG and they don't get accepted or told to be alternate, we don't want to limit their participation in these activities in those organizations, so that if they do then decide to participate in other organizations, we don't want them to still think that they have to step away from other organizations they committed time to come back here to fill an alternate spot if they were put into. Yes, Jacob.
Yeah. So just like will there be like a range list for like after the spring nominations process do a position where we go on the semester, or is it was that just like figure just like
I think it's there at the time following the spring nominations process to the end of the season. Sorry, bylaws are very specific, so if you have any questions about it, reach out. I read them a lot of times, but still forget lots of sections, so you're not to that. This is specifically the president section. So when it comes to this first line, it says resident shall be required to use a minimum of 2 sets of office hours and 18 principal hours each week. Just to reiterate this, this is also in addition to the speaker's office hours and also the vice president's office hours. Currently, the speaker, president, and vice president can have office hours when they please, when their schedules allow. But we did think that it would be important for at least, and 2 is the number that I asked him about this, and this is what he recommended. 2 is the number that he said would be a reasonable amount for these leaders to send out UISG either the week before or at the beginning of the semester, to say that I'm in office for these 2 hours each week. Come in, please contact me and talk with me, and if you want to meet, yes, I can, but this is 2 weeks that I set aside to come to the UISG office so that we can have conversations if you need to talk with me. I think it's a way to increase the transparency and at least show that leaders are going to be available for an individual that does want to talk with them. This the power section, again, just a small and the veto process. This is one that we talked extensively about, but we thought was important because right now it seems that candidates can come out at 5:30 on Fridays. We wanted So we kind of put that pressure on the president, which, if you really think about it, if the legislation is coming out 5:30 on Friday, the president wants with access to the legislation, and yes, amendments can be made, yes, other things can change within that legislation, they will be there at the meeting, or the president or vice president are expected to go to the meetings. So that after 48 hours after the passage of that legislation, they should have made a decision and should have contacted the Speaker of the Senate as a whole, and the affected parties. This can come in the form of a formal statement or just a quick email that says, hey, I decided to veto this legislation, and I'm going to come up with a more formal statement as to why, but currently this is just what I'm saying, and this is my opinion. Just that senators are not thrown off when it comes to making the decision whether or not they want to overturn that veto, because that's something that is a long exercise of power by the Senate against a veto, which is also the president just has the veto on the Senate. So it's just a process that we wanted to not rush any individual, and we thought at this moment in time the president was given ample time to make their veto. Do you guys have any comments on this as well? Yeah, go ahead. Specifically for executives, officers, and reps of their law. I believe the Speaker of the Senate, I think it has to be inside the UISG office, but I know that Congress has been experimenting with having office hours outside the UISG office, so I think that there can be that flexibility outside the UISG office if people don't feel comfortable in there. But currently for executives, no, it doesn't have to be there. For the Speaker, I believe right now, yes, but
We also thought that it's so up in the air. We couldn't come up with a different decision whether to make it inside or outside or get one limit. So it can be changed in the future.
Cool. So moving on to the next piece of legislation, this is kind of just formalizing something that's already happening and how we bring things to the floor. So the current process is senators would author a bill, they can bring it to committee, and then it goes to the Senate floor, and on the top of the legislation it will say referred by, and it's usually referred by the committees that the senators are sitting on. We saw this as something that could be described a little better, because sometimes I'm sitting on sustainability committee and there's legislation coming out of there that I haven't seen in committee yet that has our name on it, and so we just want to clarify when it is and is not okay to put referred by committee. So this new process would stipulate that for funding and government document changes, they must go through document interface. Everything else has the option to go to the committee for its support, but it's required to, and at the end of the day, the Speaker of the Senate has an ultimate plate. Say so on what is on the docket. Yeah.
this is not just Sarah, this is not a call on the sustainability committee. This is just to say that it's something that is happening a lot. Just to know that when we say it has been referred to the floor by the committee, that it actually has a meeting that I was, not just that those people sit on those committees, because there can be a dissenting opinion within that committee.
And having been committee chair last year, we did follow this process very meticulously, and it got to be that the legislation is a bottleneck because you have to prepare it by Friday, like 10 days before it went to the floor, and you were supposed to have it ready to go to the floor. So it would just create a lot more confusion and unnecessary, unnecessary hoops to jump through. So we just thought this would ease the process and just sort of the situation that we are right now. Are there any questions?
So the idea here is to have a conversation in committee, and so then it could still get to the floor theoretically, because even if it's not referred by committee, you could still go to Congress
that like the committee chair kind of has the responsibility then to speak during the debate and say as to why the committee did not decide to recommend it to the floor. That position is represented because at the end of the day, those are the individuals that got to see the legislation first and had the most time to look at it. Any more questions on this section?
So this one is an establishment of a parliamentarian position. So just to give a little bit of background, there have been like multiple speakers and pro tems in the past like several years that have like kind of relied on some people having a lot of previous knowledge on Robert's rules to kind of assist them, having that be like Titus, Howe, and Mitchell Dunn and myself to kind of. The speaker and the pro tems have had really good like overview of what Robert's rule is, enough to be knowledgeable and like answer questions off the bat. But as we've become a little bit more of an outspoken Senate, there have become like more questions as to what is Robert's rules, like what do our bylaws say. And it's become very clear, I think, to all of us that we all don't know the bylaws in the way that we should in our like parliamentary procedure. So this would just be a way to establish someone who has accountability to know all of those documents. So the parliamentarian would not only be well versed in Robert's rules to the point where they could answer like any question, and they would also know all of our governing documents. So that would include the Constitution, the Elections Code, SJC bylaws, and our bylaws. So it would be this person's like entire job outside of speaking on the floor would be to answer all of those questions and to be a point of reference. So that if anyone was like, well, what is the answer to that? The parliamentarian would be able to answer that question. So typically on the floor there have been like points of order or points of inquiry, and they kind of just like go out into space and no one really answers them, or someone answers them who knows the answer. But this would solidify that there is someone who should know the answer and does know the answer and would automatically answer those questions. So the whole goal of this is to take the burden of like answering those questions off of the speaker and the pro tem when they're running debate, and to put it on the parliamentarian. This does not stop the parliamentarian from being able to speak on the floor themselves. If they raise their hand, they'd be able to speak. When points of order are yelled out on the floor, it would automatically go to the parliamentarian to answer. So they wouldn't have to raise their hand to answer. The floor would automatically be yielded to them to answer. So when the parliamentarian would raise their hand, you would know that that's not them giving an answer. That's them wanting to speak about the debate on the floor. And we saw that Purdue also has a parliamentarian, and so there's like precedent in other areas. And they should also help internal affairs administer a test of all the bylaws and help the speaker and the pro tem give a parliamentary procedure presentation during all UISG retreats. So this would just be someone to hold us all accountable, and institutionalize that there's someone who knows all of our documents. It can give us quick answers off the bat, and that it is their responsibility to know that. Are there any questions? Yeah. No, it would just be on a yearly basis. So in the way elections work, it's speaker, then pro tem, so we added that this would be the election after the pro tem. So that we didn't want to limit. If the pro tem wants to take on the role of being parliamentarian, they're more than welcome to, but it's not being thrust upon them on top of their other duties. So it does not go under the pro tem. They serve as their own position, but the pro tem could also serve as parliamentarian on top of the pro tem position. Yeah.
What if it's some reason the pro tem decide that they no longer need that role because they have a secret place and have that good place? What happened?
You mean if like the parliamentarian decides to no longer want to be parliamentarian? If he wants to, if they want to have both. I would encourage them to not, but if they chose not to, I guess we would just we would just have the re-election, just re-elect the position of whatever role they were elected to, or chose to not do anymore. Does that answer your question? So if they decided they didn't want to do it anymore, we would recommend that they didn't. But if they chose not to, that position would then become open, and at the next Senate meeting, we would elect that position for someone else.
And this position has the same expectation of any other position of leadership within UISG. When you are applying or running for that spot, it is an expectation that you will fulfill that spot for as long as you're in the Student Senate for that term. So like it is highly discouraged to decide to not be that role after you did run for it. Amber?
Yeah, I guess this kind of goes with that, but I guess is my understanding that like the speaker and speaker pro tem understand like Robert's rules, and so kind of seeing as this is like a supplement to their rules maybe, how do we like ensure accountability for this? Because in my mind this is already an expectation of like 2 people in Senate, so, and maybe it's like, I'm not trying to approach it, but like I don't understand like why we're adding another position, and then like how are we holding people accountable for that?
Yeah, so it does not ever, I mean, it says that in the bylaws that speaker and pro tem should have a general knowledge of both of them, but this one's a little bit more strict in that they shouldn't be well versed and like this is their job is to know these. So I think it just provides another mechanism of accountability to someone else. So yeah, we would ideally like the speaker and the pro tem to be as well versed as the parliamentarian. They also fulfill a lot of other duties, and sometimes knowing like 4 different 20-page documents inside and out on top of like a 100-page book of parliamentary procedure, that can be a lot. So this just like extends accountability and just adds another person.
So how do we ensure that the parliamentarian is in fact like knowledgeable and like doing this, I guess?
There is no accountability mechanism, but it would be that they would self-select. So it wouldn't be that they would be doing this job on top of other jobs that they might want to do better. It's like this role is this role, and that's all it does. Whereas speaker and pro tem, they fulfill other like mechanisms and they do other things on top of being well versed in the bylaws and in the governing documents. But this person's sole job is to do that. So it was just like it makes it really clear that this is your one job.
In a lot of cases, in like other examples of government, the parliamentarian is decided by test, and whoever does the best with the test is the one that makes the decision. But we did that was to take away power from the Senate and make that decision.
If you would like to add an amendment to that, that's totally fine.
If you find a test for
Well, I mean, what if the test that you have to like, oh, it's 70% to then be
yeah, adding that to a position, a role of it just this is so early in the student senate term that like who would administer that, because we only just approved the speaker of the Senate, so it kind of had to be like either a previous person in the organization or the UISG advisor or the president. I don't know. Like it's just a conversation that's really hard to have because it's an early part of the year. Who would administer that, make sure it's fair, who would make the test, because paying is the same every year. No.
So to add to that, it's already stipulated in the bylaws of internal affairs. It's supposed to administer a test of the bylaws and our operating documents to Senate part of the responsibilities of the parliamentarian to assist in that. And we're hoping that by opting in this position, that person will like be forced to learn all those rules, and that will help all of us to manage that too.
So I know this year there was kind of issue where maybe like a lot of people, and this is about like the speaker panel, there was like not related to contested speaker panel, I ran contested. So like I was just wondering like what would happen if there ever was a case that was that we don't want to see parliamentarian. Like is it mandated that there has to be a parliamentarian or?
I mean, we don't have that there needs to be one, and I think if no one wanted to try, we would just leave it open, because I would think we really want someone to be the expert, not like be in being the expert. So I would kind of advise the insurance will assist, because we can function that we would just function better with the role and having someone who would be dedicated to being knowledgeable in all of these.
And I'd like to reiterate the point that I made earlier about how this last year specifically, there have been very contentious debates, and I know previous years it's been the same. We believe that it's the role of the speaker and speaker pro tem to make sure the climate update is as best as possible and as inclusive as possible and as civil as possible. So then we should take away then we recognize that maybe if they're going about the sure that we are following parliamentary procedure and can be that person to answer any questions during any contentious debates. Because during those debates, it can be very hectic and can ask a lot of questions.
I was just interested in your rationale on why you made this position elected by the Senate and not appointed by the Senate.
In the same way that Speaker and Pro Tem are elected by the Senate, it's not an executive position. It's for the Senate, so that's why.
So this
Last one, people. Woo!
this is just a bill talking about Senate and executive eligibility. And so in the laws previously, there was a clause that defined the minimum number of hours a senator and executive needed to be in was 18 between the fall and spring semesters. And so we just wanted to add clarification to this. That there was a loophole in which a senator could be in 18 semester hours in the fall and then not be a student at the University of Iowa in the spring, and then potentially be in Senate. And so we just really wanted to clarify this pre-existing requirement. As students here, we're limited by FERPA and not knowing eligibility, and so this is something that the UISG advisor oversees, and we wanted that process to be as clear as possible. And so that's where this is coming from. Oh, and we made an exception for candidates pursuing residency, so that we are two senators who may only be are limited to 6 semester hours while they're working 30 hours a week. Any questions?
So I know I asked Joseph about this earlier, and I think maybe so. I'm just confused. So like, does the 9 semester hours of the fall and spring for the minimum period 9 to 11 is 18 semester hours present? So like, could I only like 6 hours in the fall and 12 in the spring? Does that still be a minimum requirement of 18, or is it like, you know?
We were just trying to make it as explicit as possible, as in 9 one semester, 9 another, for a total of 18. So that's how it should be interpreted. If that's not clear, then we could definitely be open to it. But our interpretation of what was already here today, we tried to make very clear, because our interpretation was that the old wording was 9 both semesters. It just didn't say that explicitly, so we were trying to say that explicitly and just trying to make us like 9 18. We didn't know how to say that for us guys.
Hi again. So I guess, and maybe this is just me not completely like comprehending everything, but I guess for me, I'm just thinking like, what if like a president, for example, needed only one more class to graduate in the spring and didn't want to like pay like more than they really need to, but this is only like one more class. I guess like why would that be okay?
Yeah, so Joseph can maybe add a little bit onto this at the end, but we felt that being in student government, our primary responsibility and identity is being a student, and we feel like that's achieved by being in 9 semester hours, and again, like this is just coming from dividing 18 by 2. And so because the president and executives and senators are positions you opt into, we feel that it is so important as an undergraduate for that undergraduate experience that you're representing on behalf of all of us that you should be a student in 9 semester hours.
And I just have that we're in conversations where like you guys maybe thought of like adding like sections could be made with like the discretion of like the advisor and like speaker potentially, or
So if we were to make a discretion of an individual with like an exception with the speaker, I don't know how the law of FERPA writes, and I don't know if that is a violation of FERPA. So we do have to be very strict in who is knowledgeable about the enrollment status. Obviously, you can tell someone, but I don't know if that's actually legal for you to tell someone. You'd have to look into FERPA. I'm not an expert in that. Because since it is administered by the UISG advisor, we wanted the interpretation as strict as possible, so that the expectation of UISG is enacted by the UISG advisor. And to clarify what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's wrong. The current wording of the UISG bylaw says 9 semester hours in the fall, which means it can be interpreted in many ways. The interpretation that I have, and I think of us all here, is that you take 9 semester hours in the fall and 9 semester hours in the spring. But there are interpretations that do not do that, include taking 9 semester hours in the between the fall and the spring, which are valid interpretations of the current bylaws. We, as a group, decided that that was not what was best for UISG, so we want to make this change. But when it comes to exceptions, I definitely think that we can expand on that, and those can be amendments that can be made on the floor next week if you so wish.
And for more context, I looked at other bylaws and I couldn't find a case in any other that specifies any eligibility for the president. And so we were just working with what was here in the week and a half we had to make amendments to bylaws. But this isn't something that we were able to find us for.
So why is the exception made for people pursuing residency because they have to work 30 hours per week when any other student may have that same requirement of them? I feel like it's kind of exclusive to low-income students who might have to work full-time and non-traditional students who are part-time students.
So that is a concern that you can make next week. I don't see how that question it is very loaded, and I can give you my opinion. But when it comes to just how we decided it to be, this is how we decided it to be based off of what the bylaws have said currently. And this is how we changed the interpretation of the current bylaws, and we weren't necessarily changing the expectation. If we do want to change how we function as a student and decide and want to be more inclusive of non-traditional students, which I believe make up about 20% of our student population, we can do so, but this is how we change the current numbers. We changed the interpretation of the current numbers and not necessarily change them. But we did include an exception because we did know that that was the most prominent exception semester hourly rule.
So we're not trying to change anything. We were just trying to further clarify what already existed because we didn't need further clarification. This is our clarification of that, but we didn't think that we were knowledgeable enough to change it from 9 to 6. The previous class had stated 9 in the fall and spring because that could be in different ways. We chose the interpretation we thought was best, so we weren't trying to change anything at all. And I think, I don't know a lot about residence requirements, but it's just lower from 9 to 6, so they can't take more than 6 at the University of Iowa. So it'd be that they can't physically take more than 6, and that's why we made that exception. You're more than welcome to change that, but we weren't trying to, our conversations didn't move around anything other than let's just for the that already existed. So you're more than welcome to make an amendment, but that's our conversations went. I think that we were not interested, I guess, in making any further changes. We were just clarifying.
One, so for the exception of students in residency, it's maybe like, I don't say that very well. Is it like first year students like in the exception? No. Okay.
This is a screenshot of the bylaw update that is done in that email as it currently stands. So this is exactly the words exceptions shall be made for candidates pursuing residency. And they would make that process known to the UISG advisors, and then the exception could be made for them.
Thanks. And the second question, so it kind of goes back to what Senator Crow was asking about the presidency. So if the president, let's just say like, the scenario that she used was true, and they needed that one class, would they have to resign then because they are no longer part of the bylaws, or would they just continue and just it would be known that they just
I mean, if they're not in compliance with the bylaws, I think that sounds, for impeachment, but I don't think
They can also take more classes. We all know that the president has a salary, and so it does cost to live here in SC, but again, they do have a salary that could cover paying for that. Yeah. Sarah? I think that this would warrant a conversation of the UISG advisor. And also make these conversations before then as well. But if they end up choosing not to do this, we don't necessarily think, according to what the current bylaws said, again, that you could be removed for Senate for that. And so that is already a process that is dictated in the bylaws. This is just clarifying what are those requirements to warrant that process to be had.
It's hard because like for reasons like students can't really know. So it would just be up to the discretion of the advisor. If our interpretation of FERPA is right. Like we can't know and we can't force people to disclose. So it would be hard for Senate to enforce any of it because we can't mandate that people tell us their enrollment status. So it would just be our advice to the advisor and the guidelines we would give to the advisor for when this happens.
So do you know where this, not like the changed version of this on the screen, but where this originally came from, if students don't even have a way to hold each other accountable for this? Like, why is it necessary?
Necessary for what?
Why do we need to have this in our bylaws as like a precedent to serving if we don't have a way to hold each other accountable?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come in the way of like serving?
Yeah, hello everyone. So currently our process is, we've had conversations with Dr. Nelson about how we're checking these requirements and everything like that, with if they're going to be at the beginning of the year, if they're going to be at the semester, if they're going to be when people come in. So currently the setup and the process of how this year has ran is that you all have been, I guess, verified to be here based on your academic and conduct. If you came in the spring, that's when you were verified. So you all, at some point of you coming into this organization, you have been verified by the advisor that you are able to be here. For our new people that came in, you were just recently verified by your advisor. So I mean, like I said, it just kind of depends with your entry to UISG. But if you did run into the general election, your credit hours of what you had and your conduct was only looked at once, and we haven't had any other general update just to see people's eligibility. So that could have changed for academic reasons, for conduct reasons, and we wouldn't have known because we haven't checked. So because we've